Doesn't mean you got a man. At least you stick to him.
He's not my man.
Well, you're with him, ain't you?
Not like you mean.
All right.
Kid! I got a girl in here. You want to hurt her, keep on shooting.
Tonight, after dark, I can get horses.
Step aside, Reverend.
Let me tell you about Silver Lode from 1954. Picture this. A small town on July 4th. Flags waving everywhere, people celebrating in the streets. Everything seems perfect until this mysterious marshal shows up and accuses our main character of murder right before his wedding day. The whole town turns against him in just a few hours. The way they filmed this one is absolutely incredible. All these beautiful colors that really pop on screen, especially during the chase scenes through the town. There's this amazing church tower sequence that will keep you on the edge of your seat. The whole thing is basically a perfect mirror of what was happening in America during the McCarthy era, but they tell it in such a clever way.
Stay away from my man.
Westward, the Women from 1951 is absolutely nothing like what you'd expect from a Western. Instead of focusing on cowboys and gunfights, it tells the story of 150 brave women who decide to travel across the country to California. They're heading there to marry minors, but the journey itself becomes this incredible tale of survival. The wagon train scenes are just breathtaking, especially when they're crossing the desert. You can almost feel the heat and dust while watching it. What really gets me is how they showed these women dealing with every possible challenge, from attacks to accidents to weather. And they just keep pushing forward. It's based on true stories of pioneer women, which makes it even more powerful. Here's something I've been wondering. What's your absolute favorite forgotten Western movie scene that just stays with you? You know, the kind that pops into your head randomly and makes you want to watch the whole thing again? Share your memories in the comments below. I bet there are some amazing stories we could all enjoy.
He's not my man.
Well, you're with him, ain't you?
Not like you mean.
All right.
Quit that!
The Naked Spur from 1953 is such a different kind of Western. Jimmy Stewart plays this bounty hunter who's basically lost his soul, which is so different from his usual friendly roles. The whole movie follows this small group of people in the Colorado Rockies, and the tension between them just keeps building and building. The scenery is absolutely stunning. Lots of steep cliffs and raging rivers that become like characters in the story. There's this incredible scene where they're all trying to climb these massive rocks while fighting each other, and you can practically feel how dangerous it is. The movie really shows how greed and desperation can change people, and Stewart's performance is just outstanding.
I'll have another rye.
You didn't answer my question.
Station West came out in 1948, and it's basically what you'd get if you took a classic detective noir story and dropped it right into the Old West. Dick Powell plays this undercover investigator trying to solve a gold theft, and every line he delivers is just perfect. Like something out of a Raymond Chandler novel, but with cowboys. The whole movie has this dark, mysterious vibe, especially in the saloon scenes. The way they use shadows and light is incredible. And Jane Greer plays this saloon owner who might be helping or might be causing all the trouble. You're never quite sure. There's this great scene where Powell first walks into her saloon, and the tension is so thick you could cut it with a knife. Four Guns to the Border from 1954 is one of those movies that really knows how to build up to something special. The basic story is about outlaws planning one last robbery, but it's so much more than that. There's this amazing sequence during a massive storm that will absolutely blow you away. The rain, the wind, everything feels so real you'll want to grab an umbrella. And in the middle of all this chaos, there's this beautiful forbidden romance story happening. The way they shot the storm scenes is just incredible. You can almost feel the rain hitting your face. What really makes this movie special is how it balances the action with these quiet, emotional moments between the characters. Quick question for all you Western fans. If you could ride alongside any character from these forgotten gems, who would it be and why? Drop your answer in the comments below. I'm really curious to hear your choices.
I married him.
That's not what I asked. What does that make?
He was the seventh.
When you figure...
Let me tell you about one more hidden gem, the Tall T from 1957. Randolph Scott plays this rancher who gets caught up in this really tense situation with some ruthless outlaws. The whole movie takes place in this limited space, but it never feels cramped or boring. Richard Boone plays one of the most interesting villains I've ever seen in a Western. He's cruel, but also weirdly philosophical. The way they build tension throughout the movies is just masterful. There's not a lot of action, but every conversation feels like it could explode into violence at any moment. The desert scenery is gorgeous too. Lots of rocks and cacti that make you feel like you're right there in the middle of nowhere with these characters.
Remember what I told you. Once Nachikoa gets his hands on him, this whole territory...
Let me tell you about Cattle Queen of Montana from 1954. Barbara Stanwyck plays this incredible character who has to fight to keep her land after her father is killed. Ronald Reagan stars alongside her, and they have this amazing chemistry on screen. The movie was actually filmed in Glacier National Park, and the scenery is just breathtaking. You've got these massive mountains, crystal clear lakes, and beautiful forests that make everything feel so real. The story has everything: revenge, romance, and some really intense action scenes. What really stands out is how they show this strong female character fighting against all odds in a time when that wasn't common in Westerns.
Getting Billy from you, aside from going over you.
Don't let him do it, Frank!
Ride Lonesome from 1959 is another amazing hidden gem. Randolph Scott plays this bounty hunter who's after a wanted man, but there's so much more going on beneath the surface. The whole movie has this feeling of mystery about it. You're never quite sure about anyone's real motives. The cinematography is absolutely stunning, with these wide-open desert shots that make you feel tiny in comparison. There's this burned tree that appears in the movie that's become kind of legendary among Western fans. It's like this symbolic thing that means something different to everyone who watches it. The way the story unfolds is just perfect, revealing little bits of information that keep you guessing until the very end. Here's a fun one. What's the most beautiful Western filming location you've ever seen in these older movies? Those sweeping landscapes that just take your breath away? Share your scenic favorites in the comments.
Well, them girls of yours.
It was their idea. They were worried about me.
I lost my head when I saw him lying there and Jim standing over.
3 Hours to Kill from 1954 stars Dana Andrews as a man who survived a lynching attempt and comes back to town 3 years later to find out who really committed the murder he was accused of. The way they handle flashbacks in this movie is really interesting. They show you what different people remember about that night, and each version is slightly different. The movie does such a good job of building tension as Andrews gets closer to the truth. There's this great scene in the local saloon where you can just feel how uncomfortable everyone is when he walks in. It's like the whole room is holding its breath, waiting to see what he'll do.
Tex, rile him and you're going to hear some screaming.
Nelson, terrific in his first start.
Day of the Outlaw from 1959 is probably one of the most unique Westerns ever made. Robert Ryan plays this rancher caught in the middle of a range war when suddenly this group of outlaws takes over the whole town. But here's what makes it special. Most of the movie takes place during this massive blizzard. The snow becomes like another character in the story, and you can practically feel how cold it is just watching it. The way they film the snow scenes is incredible. Everything feels isolated and dangerous. There's this amazing sequence where they're trying to lead the outlaws through the mountains in the middle of the storm that will just leave you breathless.
I can be a little trouble.
Let me tell you about Escape from Fort Bravo from 1953. William Holden stars as this strict cavalry captain in charge of a prison camp during the Civil War. The whole setup is fascinating because it's basically a prison break movie set in the Old West. What makes it really special is how they filmed it in Death Valley. You can practically feel the heat coming off the screen. There's this incredible scene where they're being attacked by Native Americans who use the rocks and cliffs for cover, and it's shot in this way that makes you feel totally surrounded. The tension just keeps building and building, especially when you realize that the escaped prisoners and their pursuers might have to work together to survive. I'm really curious. Which of these underrated Western actors do you think deserved more recognition? Share your picks in the comments and tell us why they stood out to you.
Into a living target.
Slater.
He'll be riding in here with more.
Backlash from 1956 is one of those movies that keeps you guessing right until the end. Richard Widmark plays this guy searching for his father, but everyone tells him his father is dead. The mystery aspect of this Western is what makes it so unique. It's like a detective story on horseback. There's this great scene where Widmark confronts someone who might know the truth, and the way they shot it, with all these shadows and tight camera angles, makes it feel like a film noir. The desert locations are stunning, and they use them to create this feeling of isolation that really adds to the mystery.
Double trek through the awesome canyon of fruit together.
This here's Comanche Todd.
The Last Wagon from 1956 has one of the most intense openings I've ever seen in a Western. Richard Widmark plays this character called Comanche Todd, and he's being brought in for murder when their wagon train is attacked. Suddenly, he's the only one who can help a group of survivors make it to safety. The way they film the wagon train scenes is incredible. You can almost taste the dust in your mouth. There's this amazing sequence where they have to lower the wagons down a cliff that will have you holding your breath. The relationships between the characters feel so real, especially as they learn to trust someone they were afraid of at first.
Every half hour, somebody's going to get shot till that cash gets tossed.
Fury at Gunsight Pass from 1956 is such an underrated gem. It's basically a heist movie set in the Old West, but with a really clever twist. The whole movie takes place during this massive blizzard, and the way they use the weather to create tension is just brilliant. You've got these two rival gangs planning to rob the same bank, but the storm throws everything into chaos. The scenes in the snow are incredible. Visibility is almost zero, and you can barely tell who's who. What really makes it special is how they show different parts of the story from different characters' perspectives, so you're never quite sure who to trust. Here's something to think about. What's the most unique Western plot twist you've ever seen? You know, the kind that made your jaw drop? Share your favorites below, even from other forgotten Westerns.
In Solomon's time, we had no such problem.
For this pen.
I didn't do this. He did.
Who did?
The Brass Legend from 1956 takes a really different approach to the typical Western story. Hugh O'Brien plays this sheriff who's losing his eyesight but has to face down a dangerous outlaw. The way they show his struggle with his vision is so well done, sometimes the camera goes blurry to show you what he's seeing. There's this incredible tension throughout the whole movie because you know he's trying to keep his condition secret while still doing his job. The townspeople scenes are great too. You really feel how much pressure he's under to protect everyone while dealing with his personal crisis. Escape from Red Rock from 1957 is one of those hidden treasures that more people need to know about. Brian Donlevy plays this escaped prisoner who ends up helping a young woman save her ranch. The interesting thing about this one is how it blends Western action with this really touching story about redemption. The red rocks of the title are actually part of the scenery, and they use these amazing locations to create some really tense chase scenes. There's this great sequence where they're trying to escape through a narrow canyon while being pursued that will keep you on the edge of your seat.
Louder and louder, until every street and alley rings with the thunder of convoys.
Thunder Over Arizona from 1956 is one of those movies that really captures the feeling of the Old West. Skip Homeyer plays this mining engineer who gets caught up in this complicated situation with rival mining companies. What makes this one special is how they shot all the underground mining scenes. You can almost feel the dampness of the tunnels and hear the creaking of the wooden supports. The movie has some of the most realistic mining sequences I've ever seen in a Western. There's this incredible scene where they're trying to prevent the mine from flooding, and the tension is just unbelievable. They also did a great job showing the whole community that builds up around these mines, all the families and workers whose lives depend on them. The action scenes are really well done, especially when they're fighting in the narrow mine shafts. Let me ask you this. Which of these forgotten Western towns would you want to visit if you could time travel? Tell me in the comments what draws you to that particular place. Dragoon Wells Massacre from 1957 is such an intense survival story. It follows this really diverse group of people, including cavalry officers, outlaws, and civilians, who have to work together when they're attacked. The way they filmed the desert scenes is incredible. You can practically feel the heat coming off the screen. What really makes this movie special is how it shows these different characters, who would normally be enemies, having to trust each other to stay alive. There's this amazing sequence where they're trying to find water in the desert, and the desperation feels so real. The relationships between the characters are really well developed, especially as they start to realize that their prejudices against each other don't matter much when they're all fighting to survive.
We leave in 10 minutes.
Fort Massacre from 1958 is one of those psychological westerns that really gets under your skin. Joel McCrea plays this cavalry sergeant who's leading a group of survivors through Apache territory, but he's dealing with his own personal demons. The way they shot the desert scenes is just incredible. All these towering rock formations and deep canyons that make the characters look tiny in comparison. What really makes this movie special is how it shows the psychological toll of survival. There's this amazing scene where they're trapped without water, and you can just feel everyone starting to crack under the pressure. The tension between the characters keeps building as they start to question their sergeant's motives and decisions.
You boys have any luck?
Drunk or sober, you're still the best.
Last of the Badmen from 1957 is this fantastic movie that not enough people talk about. George Montgomery plays an undercover detective infiltrating this gang that specializes in springing criminals from jail. The whole setup is fascinating because it shows how organized crime worked in the Old West. What really makes this movie special is how they show all the planning and preparation that goes into these prison breaks. There's this incredible sequence where they're coordinating this complex jailbreak, and the tension just keeps building and building. The movie has some amazing chase scenes through narrow canyons, and they film them in a way that makes you feel like you're right there on horseback. The relationships between the gang members feel really authentic, especially when they start suspecting there might be an informer among them. Here's a fun challenge for you. If you could remake any of these forgotten westerns today, which modern actor would you cast in the lead role? Drop your dream casting choices in the comments. I bet there are some amazing combinations we haven't thought of. Cole Younger, Gunfighter from 1958 represents this really unique take on the classic Western outlaw story. Frank Lovejoy plays Cole Younger, but not in the way you might expect. Instead of glorifying the outlaw life, this movie shows the toll it takes on a person. The way they handle the flashback scenes is really interesting. They show you how this ordinary man gradually became this famous gunfighter. There's this powerful scene where he's trying to protect this young guy from following the same path, and you can really feel the weight of his experiences. The movie was shot in these beautiful locations with lots of open plains and rocky outcrops that create this sense of isolation. What really stands out is how they show the human side of these legendary figures we usually only hear about in history books. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button if you love discovering hidden movie gems like these. And remember to share your own forgotten Western favorites in the comments. I'm always looking for more amazing movies to watch and share with all of you wonderful people. Until next time, keep exploring these incredible classic Westerns.